Okay, we're up to the new parak, Kuf Dalin on the base. Kuf Dalin on the base as our final week in Masechta Menachos. Next Motzei Shabbos, guys, Chulin. Next Motzei Shabbos, we begin Chulin, which will take us well past Rosh Hashanah. Says the Gemara, Hadron Allah, Hadron, Harei Allah Yisaren. I'm still a little loopy. Harei Allah Yisaren. Person says, it's upon me and Yisaren. Yavi, Echad, you bring, we're discussing Lashonis that you're going to bring a mincha. So he said, upon me and Isarin, what do you bring? You bring one Isarin. Esroinois, it's upon me Esroinois. Yavi Shnayim, you bring two. We'll see what the Chiddush is so far. Parashti, I explained how many Esroinois I wanted to bring. Ve'eni Yodeya Mashe Parashti, and I don't know how many. So I said I'm going to bring X amount of Esroinois, but I don't know how many. But I did explain an amount. Yavi Shishim Isarim. You have to bring 60. We saw that the biggest kli in the Beis Hamikdash was machzik 60. So since he said parashti, he has to bring the maximum. He has to bring the biggest amount, which about would be 60. Now notice, Rabbi doesn't argue on this over here. He doesn't argue on it here. You'll see why in a second. Harei Elai mincha. He says it's upon me a mincha. Now we're not discussing amount of flour. We're discussing type of mincha, right? And we know there are multiple times. So yavi eza sheyirtza. So what are the nedavos? Let's go through them outside. Minchas soilos, minchas machvas, minchas marcheshes, minchas afeitaner, which there are two of chalois and rekikin. So he brings, if he says upon me a mincha, he brings whichever one he wants. However, Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion. Yavi minchas hasoiles. He brings the first one, the minchas hasoiles, shim yuchedesh menachos, because it's more miyuchad of the menachos. So given our druthers to bring the more miyuchad rather than the other four, bring the minchas hasoiles. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Mincha, a person says upon me to bring a mincha, or min ha mincha. He says upon me, bring me a type of mincha. Yavi achas. He brings one. Menachos. He says, Menachos, I min Menachos. Yavi shtayim. So this is similar to the case of Yisar and Esroinais. This is mincha Menachos. Pirashti. Ve'eni yadeyam ezem and prashti. I explained which type of mincha I wanted to bring. Similar to the case, I explained the amount I wanted to bring, right? Similar to the case where I explained the amount I want to bring. So in this case, what's the thing going to be? Yavi chamishasan. He has to bring all five. Since he doesn't know which one he went ahead and singled out, he has to go ahead to cover himself. He has to bring all five: the soiles, the machvas marcheshes, and the two types of afesaner, the chala and the rekikin. Pirashti mincha shel esroinim. I explained the mincha of esroinim. Ve'eni yadeya kama pirashti, and I don't know how much. Again, so the first case was he pirashti esroinos. Over here says Prashti Mincha Shel Esroinos, and he doesn't know. Yavi Shishim Isara, and he brings 60. So the Tanakama says there's no difference where he says I explain the amount, or no difference when he says I explain the mincha and the amount without the word mincha. So there's no difference. Rabbi Yoime Yavi Minacha Shel Esroinos Me Echad Ve'at Shishim. Says Rabbi, he has to bring minachos from 1 until 60. He's going to have to bring 1, then he's going to have to bring 2. Then he's going to bring a 3, and that is a total of 1,830 in total. He's going to have to bring 1,830 in total. That's the amount. So what's the difference in this case and the first case? Rabbi agrees in the first case, and in this case he argues, right? In the first case he said 60 works. Over here he said you have to bring. Okay, so let's see Rashi. Rabbi Aimer, first wide line. Rabbi Aimer, even the Amar Mincha, since he said the word Mincha, mashma chada. It's mashma 1. Alma b'kli echad kava. He was kaveya in one kli. V'im yavi shishim b'kli echad. And if he brings 60 in one kli, shema batzame hachi nadar. Maybe he said 59. V'havi mincha yisera. And then what? If he brings 60 and he only said 59, it'll be an extra mincha. You'll have an extra isarin in there. Visle the Rebbe, kfiyusa demana milsa. And Rebbe says, whatever kaveya, whatever you say counts. Remember, we had a machloikis. Reb Shimon said, it doesn't go after what you say. Whatever you say, we look away with, and whatever you do, you do. So therefore, Reb Shimon, even you said machvas, and you brought macheshes, it works, right? Rabbi says, no, whatever you say counts. So Mamela, if I say 59 and I bring 60, I'm bringing an extra one. So the word mincha, I'm saying mincha b'kli echad. And now I got a problem. If I bring a 60, maybe I said 59 or 58, and have extra. Hilkach yavi shishim menachos. He's got to bring 60 menachos, me'echad v'at shishim, from 1 until 60. Chada shal isaron, v'chada shal shtayim, v'chada shal shalosh, v'chada shal arba, v'chein at shishim, which will get a total of 1,830 esroinis. This was an expensive mistake. This is a very expensive mistake. Right. So that's the difference over here. Forwarding said, I prashed, I don't know what I explained. You bring 60, it's covered in there. But when you said mincha, it's kaiveya in a kli, it's like saying, I said an amount in a kli, and now you have to cover every single amount. And therefore you have to bring from 1 until 60, according to Rebbe. Very good shmak. Says the Gemara, Pshita, if you say Yisar and you bring 1, says, no, you're right. Esroinos yavi shtayim etzrichalei. The chiddush is esroinos you bring 2. Says Gemara Hanami Pshita. It's a lashon of Rabin. Says Gemara Miyut esroinos shtayim etzrichalei. The chiddush is you get away with 2 and you don't have to bring 60. Right? In other words, it's an opinion. Esroinos, anything plural can be from 2 to 60. Kamash Malon, that if you say esroinos stam, it's enough with 2. It's enough with 2. Pirashti v'eni de'ema pirashti yavi shishim isarin. You say, what did you say? I gave an amount that I'm supposed to bring, but I don't know the amount. I don't know what it is. So I want to cover all bases. What will I do? I'll go ahead and I'll bring 60, and that'll take care of everything. That was the Mishnah. Man Tana, who's the Tana? Amachizkia, the like Rebbe. It's not like Rebbe. The Rebbe, Ama Yavi Menachos Shel Esroinos, Me'echad Bat Shishim. Rebbe said, in the Sefer, you bring mincha echad shisha. Now we saw the difference in the Sefer. He said the word mincha. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Filu Temer Rebbe Bo'omer Parashti Yisroinos Avaloi Kavatim B'Kli. Guys, Geschmack. Now you understand it, right? I said I'm bringing Yisroinos, but it wasn't kaveya how many kalim, right? The Maisi Shishin Yisroinos B'Shishin money. He's right. He would bring 60 in one. No, since he wasn't kaveya, that has to be in one kli. So guys, if he was kaveya kli, then you have to bring what? 60 in one kli, 59 in one kli, 58 in one kli. If he wasn't kaveya kli, he brings 60, each one in a separate kli. Therefore, you'll be yaitza. Let's see Rashi on that. Avaloi kavatem b'kli echad, hilkach yavi shishim esroinos b'shishim kalim. He brings 60 esroinim in 60 kalim. Kolecha v'echad b'fnei atzma. Each one independent of the other. V'hadakama yavi menachos shel esroinos. As I said, that's where you kaveya in one kli. Geschmack, fellas, right? The Gemara repeats itself. You can't bring in a one. Not less, not more. Therefore, if you say one kli, you're certainly going to be yaitz one of them. Harei alai mincha, back in the Gemara, Yavi ezu sheyirtze. He said it's upon me to bring a mincha. He says it's upon me to bring a mincha. So the l'chayre he can bring anyone that he wants. He can bring what? And he wants. Rabbi Yehuda says he should bring what? Rabbi Yehuda says he has to bring a mincha soilis. That's because it's the miyuchid of the kalim. Says the Gemara. Tanan. Haylu pasach ba'akasav tchila. Why do you bring it the soilis? Because that's the first one in the parsha, guys. In the parsha, first it says soilis. Then it says. I don't know off the top of my head, it's Minchas Macheshes and Afei Saner's list. Let's say, Ella Me'ata, Harei Alei Oila, Yavi Ben Baka, Hoil Pasach Ba'akasiv Tchila. If you look in the Parsha Vayikra, fellas, when it says the Oila, the first thing it speaks about is the Shaf, the Baka, right? So therefore, L'chari, you're going to have to bring what? From Baka first, yes? If you're telling me the reason why you're going to bring Silas first is because the Mincha Silas is stated first, who adim when you say Harei Alei Oila, you should bring Baka before Tzoin because it says Baka before Tzoin. Minat Tzoin. If you said I'm going to bring an Oila from the Tzoin, Yavi Keves, he should bring a sheep before a goat. Hoila Pasava Kasav Tchila. Mina Oif, I'm going to bring an Oila Mina Oif. Yavi Tairim. You should bring a Torah before a Gazel. Hayel pasuk v'achasat chila. However, alama tanan harei olai oila yavi keves. You bring a keves. Relez ben azay oimet tor oy ben yoina. V'loy polig. Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't argue. So in other words, if you're telling me that Rabbi Yehuda, the whole reason for bringing the soiles is because of its dominance that it comes first, then it should play itself out in all the kabbanas, not just by the mincha. It should play itself by the oila, right? And therefore, and yet it doesn't. On that, the Gemara answers, Ella mai miyuchedes shem menachos, not because why it's listed first, the less shem levaya. When you say mincha, guys, you don't say mincha soiles, you call it a mincha. A machvas is called a minchas machvas. A marcheshes is called marcheshes. An afesana is called a chalois. It's called rekikin. So in other words, since we call mincha stam a mincha without a surname is a soiles, therefore, if a person says harelei mincha, you don't bring one of the five. If he doesn't remember, you bring the minchas soiles. V'atana hoyel pasuk ba'kos of tchila. You tell me a different reason. Good. And that's Rabbi Yehuda said since we began first. Now on the other hand, you're telling me it's what? Because it doesn't have a surname. What are you talking about? It says, here's the way you read it. Eza mincha miyuchedes shebe menachos, the less shem levaya, which is the minchas miyuchedes shebe menachos, the one that doesn't have the shem levaya, she pasach b'yakosev tchila. In other words, you're giving me a sign. Which one is the miyuchedes? The one that doesn't have a surname, and that's listed first. Pshita, minchas soiles kamar, says Gemara Simona Ba'alma. What's the Brisa telling me that I didn't know from the Mishnah? What the Brisa is telling me? The Mishnah says that what? Look at the Mishnah. The Mishnah says miyuchedes, right? The Brisa is saying what's miyuchedes is telling me that what? Since it doesn't have a surname, right? Since it doesn't have a surname. On that, the Gemara is saying that Rabbi Yehuda is giving you a siman. How do you know the one that's listed first, the one that doesn't have a surname? Because it's called mincha. Guys, how do you know the one that's listed first has a surname? Rishas brings a geshmak, guys. This is another example of Yehuda giving a siman. That sachadas be'achav, we had on Daf Tzadik Vov, Zahav, we had Zadad, Vazaz. So another example says Rishas Rabbi Yehuda giving us a mnemonic. Very, very, very geshmak. He gives us a mnemonic how to remember which one. Mincha mina mincha. He says mina mincha. He uses different shyness. He says what? He says mincha or okay. What was the lashon of the Mishnah? Harei olai mincha yavi ezer sheyertze. Rabbi Yehuda oime yavi mincha sesayles. Mincha oy mina mincha yavi achas minachos. Oy min menachos yavi shtayim. So he says min it's one, mincha one, shtayim is two. Boira papa. Mine mincha. Now mine is mashma types with an S. Mincha is mashma one. Mahu. Kibinama mine tarti kamar. He means to bring two. Umay mincha, the kul menachos nami mincha makarya. Because mincha, even though it's a singular lashon, it applies to all menachos. The chsiv v'zois toirais ha-mincha. This is the Torah of the mincha, and then it says, and then it lists all the menachos. So therefore, mine mincha is not going to limit me, and I'll bring two. I dilma kibin dama mincha chad mincha kamar. I said, why do you say mine? Umay mine mincha haki kamar. Mi mine mincha chad mincha alai. From the different types of menachos, one of them is upon me. So again, guys, let's outside the two passages. Let's start them to the shaila. He says mincha, mine mincha. Mine on one hand is mashma lashon rabim. And why did he say mincha? It's a lashon yachid. No, all the mincha says tars mincha, and we list others. So you see, the mincha is lav dafka limiting to one, or no, mincha is limiting to one. And why does he say mine? Right? I'm bringing one of the different types of mincha, but I'm only bringing one. So what's the? The lashon is ambiguous and go both ways. And as I presented it to you, it sounded to me in a chinami you could go both ways, right? It says the Gemara, you're right. Tashma mincha. Our Mishnah says you bring a mincha or mina mincha yavi achas. You bring one. Now why are you bringing one? Because you didn't mention the word mine. Ha mine mincha shtayim. Mincha umine mincha. Then mincha umin mincha. Mincha umin mincha. You're going to bring one. Mashma, because you said min mincha, you bring one. What happens if you said mine mincha? You bring two. So that we can place it as shaila from the lashon of the Mishnah that what you could bring two. Ema Seifa. What does the Seifa Mishnah say? Menachos, min menachos, yavi shtayim. Why? Because you said menachos. Ha mine mincha chada. But mine mincha, you're going to bring one. The Gemara always does this. Every single time it makes a dig from a Mishnah and goes either way. Guys, let's go to the Mishnah. Let's go to the Mishnah and see what the Gemara just said. Here's Ashayla. Mine mincha. Mine is mashma 2, mincha is mashma 1, or it can be the other way. So you go down to the Mishnah, you go down to the third line. At the end of the line, it says mincha, oy min mincha, yavi achas. That's because it said min. By that it said mine, mashma 2. So let's be Pashat Shaila when you say mine is 2. Next line. Menachos, oy min menachos, yavi shtayim. You know why? Because you said menachos. But if you would have said mincha, yes? If you would have said mincha, it'd be mashma only 1. Elamat, the 2 diyukim, leka lamashma mina. And the Gemara is a standard boilerplate of a Gemara that it says, this is always, if you make a diak from the Mishnah, the diak, make one way, the other way, ela leka lamashma mina. So we weren't Pashat the Shaila. Tashma. Min menachos alai, a min menachos alai, yavi shtei menachos, min echad. So you can bring 2 menachos from the same min. Either soilis, or macheshes, or machvas. Hamimine mincha. Let's say you didn't say min menachos. You said mine menachos. Then what? Hamine menachos chada. But mine mincha, you'll bring 1. It's because you said min menachos alai. Different types of menachos. Then it's 2. Mashma mine mincha chada. Says you have no raya. Dilma ham mine mincha. Maybe shtei menachos mishtei minim. Guys, if mincha can mean 2, when I say mine mincha, I'm saying mine menachos, meaning 1 machvas marcheshes. If you say min menachos, then alai, then you bring what? 1 of the same types. 1 min and 2 menachos of the same type. It could be if I say mine menachos, mine mincha. What do I mean? I mean 2 of 2 different types. So you have no raya. For loy tani hachi, min menachos alai maybe shtei menachos, min echad, mine menachos alai maybe shtei menachos mishtei minim. Mashma hamine mincha chada. Mashma mine mincha will be 1. Says going no. Dilma ham mani Reb Shimon he. Maybe who's the Tanis of Shimon Damar? Mechza chales umechza kikin yavi. We had a machloikis fellas. You say afei taner. There's two afei taner. There's chales and there's rekikin. What does it mean? There's Menachos are 10. So it means this is where you paskin. The Chacham say when you say afei taner, it's either 10 chales or 10 rekikin. Reb Shimon was of the opinion 5 and 5. Reb Shimon is of the opinion 5 and 5. So when it says mine mincha, you know what it means? My mine mincha, mincha de ispe tre mine. It means 1 type, but that 1 type, afei taner, has 2 parts. And meaning you can bring, I bring an afei taner, half rekikin, half chalos. Avarbonim the amra mechza chalos and mechza rekikin lo yavi, that you can't bring half and half. You got to bring either whole chalas or whole rekikin. Maybe shtei menachos mishtei minim. You bring 2 menachos from 2 minim. So in other words, you don't over here. We do not have what? We do not have a raya. Perashti. So we're in place of the shaila of minei mincha. Perashti ve'enu de'ema perashti. I said my mincha to bring, but I didn't know which one I said. Yavi chamishasan. You bring 5. You bring all 5. Again, what are the 5? Soilis, minchas macheshes, minchas machvas, afesana, which have 2, chales and rekikin. Man Tana, who's the Tana who says, if you don't know which one, you bring 5, who is that? Rav Yirmiyah, the like Reb Shimon. It's not Reb Shimon. Dear Reb Shimon, kivin the Amar mechza chales and mechza rekikin, yavi. Right? In other words, you're going to have to bring, not 5, you're going to have to bring 6. You're going to have to bring half and half. You're going to have to bring what? Half and half. Inami or else. So another, if the Mishnah cannot be according to Rabbi Yehuda, Damakol Menachos boys esa, ikelis suke, ba'abe esrei. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that each one of them is 10, you have a suffix of 14. Guys, let's see Rashi here. And where do you get this 14 from? What's he talking about? Mantana, go up a little bit before. Mantana d'loy mesafkale el b'chamesh menachos. Who's the Tana who's, if you say parashti, I explain my mincha, and I don't know which one it is. Tanakamu says 5. It's not like Reb Shimon. Kimin the Amar mechza chalas mechza kikin yavi. For lav dafka ka'amar. Lav dafka. Do it, lav dafka 5 and 5. Do it in Latisha chalas v'chadra kakin. In other words, the denominations are lav dafka 5 and 5. It can be 9 and 1, 8 and 2, as long as it adds up to 10. But, so it can't be according to him because you can have that extra mincha. Inami sabala Rabbi Yehuda the Amar perik elu menachos stuff like kol menachos boys eser ikel is svuke lahai ba'arbe esrei menachos. We can have an additional 4. How's your suffix, guys? In other words, not 5. I can be mistook in 14 possibles. In other words, if I explain according to Rav Shimon, right? If I explain, I don't want to explain, you have to take into account, there might be one half and half. There might be one that's all chalas. There won't be one all rakikin, but you have to take into account 5-5, 6-4, all the possibilities. And even according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says 10-10, you have a different problem. What's the problem? Rashi explains. 14, guys. We need 14. Soilus 1, Machvas 2, Macheshes 3, Hari Gimel, Minchas me'afei ikachat echad esrei sveikos. Now you have 11 sveikos, guys. In the minchas machav, in the minchas afei tanu, you have 11 sveikos. 11 and 3 will be 14. Now we can explain what are the sveikos. Dilma kula chalis nodar. Maybe what he said all 10. Shema teisha chalis v'chad rakik. Maybe he said 9 and 1. V'shema shmeina cholok. Maybe Shmoyna Chalois Shtei Rakikin. V'chein Gerui L'Chalois V'Sufi Rakikin. You're taking less Chalois and more Rakikin. At Shema Kula Rakikin till maybe the old Rakikin have a Yud Aleph. It's taking into account all the possibilities. You'd have a total of the possibilities in the denominations. The Chalois and Rakikin is 11, and then you have the Soilus Machvas Macheshes, so you have 14. In other words, you won't get off with 5, guys. Pirashti, I explain what's the point. I explain the mincha. I don't know what it is. The Mishnah says 5. It can't be according to Rabbi Shimon. It can't be according to Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because according to them, to fulfill possibilities, you have to add different amounts of half this, half that, a quarter of this, more of that. You're going to have to go ahead down the line. You're going to go into different amounts.
But wouldn't it?
You look perplexed.
Isn't there a svara that a person, if it's so complicated that you wouldn't remember? In other words, if I said a statement, maybe I don't know what I meant, but if I was so specific, the 9,
he said Parashti, but I don't know what I said. If you say that, you have to take into account any single possibility. Adarabba, according to Rabbi, it was a dumb, really weird thing. He would have remembered it in the first place. According to you, it was so not normal, right? A guy made a carbon of 58 menachos, right? 58 esrainim. Wouldn't he remember that amount? Adarabba, it's muchich that you have to take into all account because he doesn't remember. I think it's the other way, I would, respectfully disagree. Dustin, you good? You had a funny look on your face. You're not good. What are you missing?
Girl loop.
What? The whole thing?
Yeah, I didn't follow it. Let me
go through it now. I'll go through it outside. When Mishnah says, I know I said I'm bringing a mincha, but I don't know what. Said the Mishnah, you bring all 5. Why? I want to take into account any possibility. Like Rav Shimon, like Rav Yehuda, you have added possibilities. That's what the Gemara is doing. We're saying, what are the added possibilities? You're going to be half and half, and not lavdafka half and half. You're going to have to take into account maybe 9 and 1, 8 and 2, and according to Rav Yehuda, who says you bring 10 of those, you're going to have to take into account an additional 11. You go back and forth. So you have 11 plus soilus machas marcheshes is 14. So therefore, it's lav dafka. Reb Shimon can't be the Tana of the Mishnah, and Reb Yehuda can't be the Tana of the Mishnah because you haven't taken account all those possibilities. Good. Abaya Ama Afilu Tema Reb Shimon. You can even say it's according to Reb Shimon. Afilu Tema Reb Shimon. Shamina Leil Reb Shimon. The Amar Maisi U Masni. We hear a chiddush according to Reb Shimon that you can bring and make a Tanai. So that Tanai, guys, is going to be I'll be able to cover up some of the other possibilities. Rashi, Maisi, Shtei Menachos, I can bring 2 Menachos. Chodesh shel Eser Chalois, v'chodesh shel Eser Rekikin. Now, in those 10, I'm going to be able to cover up all the possibilities of mixing and matching. V'oimar, im kula chalais, I kula rekikin nadarti, oisa shenadarti tehelin nadarai, v'acheres tehenadava. So I don't know what I brought. I don't know. I'm going to bring a machvas, I'm going to bring a soilis, I'm going to bring marcheshes. Boom. The problem gets when you get to the afetana of the two types. I'm going to bring one chalais, 10, and one rekikin. That's a total of 5, right? I covered, but I didn't bring one afetana, one. I bought 10. Now, what am I going to do with that 10? Here's what I'm going to do. If it's all chalis, then the chalis it fulfills my neder, and the rekikin are in the dava. If I said rekikin, then the rekikin are going to cover my neder, and the chalis will be in the dava. Mechza shel chalis rekikin nedarti, and if I said half and half, yitztarfu chalis mizu l'fi masha nedarti, or rekikin mizu l'fi masha nedarti. And so I have a whole chala, I have a whole rekikin, I'll mix and match 5 from each. V'acheres tina dava, and whatever's left over will be in a dava, right? I have a total of 20. I got to cover 10, so I'll take 5 from one, 5 from the other. I'll be in a dava. In other words, if you hear that Reb Shimon allows this possibility, as we're going to see it in a second, he does, then you have an eitzah. He could be the Tana of the Mishnah. Again, we need 5 to be the Tana of a Mishnah. We had a problem. Like Reb Shimon was more, like Reb Yehuda is certain more, Reb Meir who said 12 was even more. I didn't even bring this shita. I'm going to bring a machvas, a marcheshes, and a silas. That's 3. I'm now going to bring 10 chalois. I'm going to bring 10 rakikin. If my neder was rakin, there it is, and the chalois are nedava. If my neder was chalois, then the chalois are my neder, and the rakikim are nedava. And if I brought half and half, so I have both. 5 from one, 5 from the other, and the extra 5 will be in a dava. He can be the Tana of the Mishnah, clean, squeaky clean, right? Perfect, right? Says the Gemara, well, not so fast. you know it could be that easy, right? Says the Gemara. The Tanya, Reb Shimon Oimer. Now, guys, here's a guy, he's a Nazir, and he's a Suffolk Mitzayra. He doesn't know, talking about Rabbi Avi, weird cases. This guy's a Nazir, he doesn't know if he's Mitzayra Muchler or not. Rashi says, but they said in Naziris Katanila, Misha Haya Suffolk Nazir Tamei, the Suffolk Tahar. He's Suffolk whether he's a Suffolk Nazir Tamei, Suffolk Tahar. Guys, as soon as you hear Nazir Tamei, you know what clicks in? Right? He's got to start counting again. If you hear Suffolk Mitzayra Asham, you got to click in with the loig shemen and all the ears and the toes and the ear and the finger. So he's a Suffolk tar, a Suffolk tar, Suffolk tamei Suffolk tar, Suffolk mitzayra muchlich tamei Suffolk tar. We don't know if he was vaday or not. Oichel b'kotchem achas samach yoyim. He can eat kotchem after 60 days. If you're interested in the cheshbon, there's a huge taisus that goes through it. We're not. We just want to prove from over here. We just want to prove over here that he can make a condition. So what's his condition? Says the Gemara. At the 61st day, maybe ashamay v'lugay, he brings a asham and a loig. Imay v'oimer. Imitzayrahu. If I'm a mitzayra and I need a full-fledged what? A full-fledged asham. Zeu ashamay, v'zeu loigay, and this is the loig. And you're going to spitz the loig 7 times in front of the proiches, and you're going to put him on his ear, his finger, and his toe. Vim lav, and if this is not, meaning I'm not a mitzayra, Osham zeh shalmei nedava. This Osham should be a shalmei nedava. Fellas, an Osham and a nedava have the same type of matanas dam. Shnaim shein arba, below the chut sikra, right? And you can eat it. The only difference is the Osham can only eat to a day and a night, and the shlom I'm eating to 2 days and a night. So you really, for all intents and purposes, the down part of this is you're limiting the amount of time of shlomim. You could be bringing shlomim to the base pasul a day earlier. That's the problem. However, I have no eitzah but to do this. For oisa asham, that asham I have to take into account. Maybe it's a shlomim, toyin shchita b'tzafain, alsan asham. Even though what, right? Even though what? even though a shlomim is b'chol mokem b'azara, since I have to take into account it might be an asham, I need sofin, like kol kachik kadashim. Umatin b'hoinais, smicha. Smicha guys for what? For the asham mitzayra. Unisachim, tenufas chazav v'shoik like the shlomim. V'noichel l'zichrei kahuna li'loim v'layla. Right? And you're cutting short a day, right? Because it's not a shlamim. I'll just add geschmack, guys. If let's say it is a shlamim. I have a loig shemen. What am I doing with that? If it's a shlamim, maybe I'm not a mitzvah. So you see a raya that we hold like Rav Shimon holds like Rabbi Tarfon. Yesterday, Machlokas of Tarfon Rabbi Akiva. Can you bring shemen as an adava? This would be you bring shemen as a dove. It's geshmak adiyah, guys. You hold like Reb Tarfon. We saw it yesterday's Gemara, last night. Machlokas, Reb Tarfon said you could bring, and Reb Akiva said you can't bring, right? Because Reb Akiva says the shemen is always gemish with the flour, and therefore it's never separate. Reb Tarfon said just like Nesachim you can bring alone, shemen you can bring alone. So over here, guys, you have to hold shemen you can bring alone. Because if taking into account it's not an osham, but it's a shlamim, what are you doing with the shemen? It must be you can bring it independent. Very so it's a raya to the lachas like Rabbi Tarfon. Now, so l'chayra, this is an eitzah. We just saw you make a condition, right? So Reb Shimon would hold in our scenario, bring 10-10, make a condition on the 5-5. Yes. Now the afagav Torah the kasha. The afagav the come mafrik mar, even though the master answered b'shchitas kachim. That means Mesechtes Vachim, guys. Eimadam Rav Shimon, Maisi Umasna Lechatchila Litkune Gavra. Aval Ba'alma the Eved in Lechatchila Loi. When would he let you make a condition? Because this guy is stuck. If he's a Mitzayra, then he can't touch him, he can't go back to the Machne. In other words, I have no other option than to do this. It's like guys, there's a very famous din. If a woman is mapple, you don't know if she gave birth or not. You don't know. She's mapple something. You don't know if it's a bag of wind. You don't know if it's a baby, right? So you're mesupik. She has to bring a chatas oif. The kohen can't eat it. You know why the kohen can't eat it? Because it might be chulin, and therefore it's nevela because you did malika on it. But I have no choice. So you bring it and you burn it. You have no choice. So over here also, you have no choice. This guy's safi mitzayra. Yechamish kaim breira. So maybe, what are you going to say? When do you do this? B'di'evid, but not lechatchila. So how can you tell me Rav Shimon's the Tana of Mishnah where he said parashti v'enu de'mal parashti, and it'll give you the option of going ahead and bringing it on a tanai. Avo ba'alma di'evid lechatchila. Hani mili gabe shlamim. The komemai ba achilasan. Why is it lechatchila not? Because a shlamim, you be mamait is man al as we pointed out. An asham is a day and a night, and a shlam is 2 days and a night. Davile kachim lebeis absul. You bring kachim lebeis absul. Alvam Menachos afil lechatchila. Guys, how long is the mincha eaten for? Only a day and a night. It's kachim kadashim. It's not nafkamina. So the afil lechatchila you can bring the condition. So Fred the Gemara, not really a kasha, says the Gemara of Shimon could be the Tana of Mishnah because he has the lechatchila option of making that tanai. Again, what's the tanai? The big 3 is going to be soilus milchem achvash. Then he's going to be 10 chalas, 10 kikin. Say if it's all chalas, boom, or kikin, boom. And if not, 5 and 5, and the other 5 will be extra. Geschmack is anything. Amalera papa la baya. Now, Rav Shimon the Amar mechza chalas and mechza kikin yavi hakamaisi isarin echad mishnei esroinam v'lugechad mishnei loigen. If he's bringing 2 esroinim, right? He's bringing 2 esroinim. 10 from one is going to be 10 from the other. But maybe some's going to be for the rakik, and maybe some's going to be for the chalis, right? That's what you're bringing. One for chalis, one for rakikim. Now, you also have to say that he's bringing half and half. Are you combining? You're combining from 2 esroinos. You're combining from 2 esroinos, 1 mincha. If it's 1 and 1 separately, but the problem is you mish. How can you mish 2? I'm bringing 10 of one, 10 of the other. Bishleim, it's 1 of one, great. 1 of the other, great. But now you're telling me one chalas is going to be rakik. I'm missing 2 together. So Shamina Leila Reb Shimon Damar Hebi Sorin Echad Mishtei Esroinos V'Legechem Mishnei Loigin Yatsa. It must be it must be a yaitza, despite the fact that this Yisrael is coming for two Esroinis are coming for this one thing. Let's see Rashi over here. I'm making it maybe a little clearer than I'm talking about. And that's why it's 5. Ukigoin the Maisi umasni sheyitztarfu chalas meisorin zeh lefi mashinodar urkikim meisorin zeh lefi mashinodar. You guys, you're having a sorin of one, a sorin the other, and you're saying that this should be for both. Hakamaisi hashti sorin mizek tzas umizek tzas. From again, guys, you're bringing that Isarin of Chala, the Isarin of Rakik, and then the third option, the half and the half, you're bringing from one Isarin, a gemished hybrid. Become an Arif Shtei Menachos Bahadi Adadi. Guys, what was your Eitzah? Guys, what was your Eitzah? The 3 we got. Rakikim we got, Chalas we got. The Chiddush is, I'm going to tell you from this Isarin, I'm going to have 2, right? One's going to be half Rakik, one is going to be half Chala. From this one, half is going to be Chala, half is going to be Rakik. How do I do that? How can you mish, right, from Tereswain to two different Chalas? Continues Rashi. The Kamar Shik Menachos Badi Adadi, V'iyu loy nadar elachada mincha la'asuye chad Yisar. And he only said, I'm going to bring one. V'chad loig, u'miftagi l'chalis rikikin. You're, fellas, listen what he said. If he said, I'm bringing, I don't know what, I could have said 5. Now, if he said 5, he's bringing one Yisarain, half of Yisarain for Rakikim, and half for Chalis. But now you're bringing 2. You're bringing 2 Esrainis. You're bringing 2 Esrainis because you haven't taken into account maybe the whole thing is a Rakik, maybe the whole thing is a Chala. So, but on the other hand, if it's half and half, he only said one Yisarain, but he's bringing 2. I'll make it clearer. I have to take into account 3 possibilities on 2 Esrainis. I have to take into account one was what? A Chala, one was a Rakik, one was a Rakik, one was a Chala. That's great. That's great because you need 2 Esrainis for that. But if I only said half and half, I didn't need that extra Yisrael. I only needed 1. 5 and 5. You're coming, in your case, what you're giving now, fellas, you're bringing an extra Yisrael on that third possibility. But you only said 1, not 2. So let's see in the Lashon of the Gemara. Says the Gemara. Yavi. How is that possible? You're bringing 1 Yisrael from 2, and you only said 1. Guys, you had a kasha? It's good. Guys, clear? It's all good? And for the Gemara, Shamina le'Reb Shimon Damar im hevi Yisrael echad mishtei Yisraelis v'lagechem mishtei lagin yatsa. He said you could do such a thing. But maybe he can be the Tana of Mishnah. He can fulfill third possibility. For the Gemara, mikmat sechi kamitz. What do you do in kamitza? The Masli, he makes a Tanai v'amar. Ichalois l'chudayo v'rakikin l'chudayo amri the kamtsina mechalois lahavi achalois. The kakamtzina rakikin lahavi rakikin. In other words, I'm doing on each one, yes, and each one I do it on. If it's rakikin, it's rakikin chalas chalas, and the other ones im mechza rakik umechza chalas, and if it's half and half, amri the kakamtzina mechalois lahavi amechza chalas umechza rakikin, or the kakamtzina rakikin lahavi amechza rakikin umechza chalas. In other words, whatever I'm doing, I'll do half for half. You're going ahead, you're doing koimitz v'chalis and rekikin, that's mixed. Because kamitz v'chalis rekikin achalis separate, right? Fred Rashi. But boy machmitz, the ichad mincha, less Rashi on the page. The ichad mincha shel chalis urekikin, Omar, havi boy yisui chalis urekikin, ulepoises on b'kli echad, and to go ahead and mix them up, the likmas b'shneim koimitz echad. L'chayra, I have to mix, if it's half and half, I have to do kamitza on both. But if I'm doing a kamitza for challah or a kamitza for kikin, I don't have a kamitza on both. So how's that possible? No, I hear in theory what you're saying, but in Mitzias, how is it possible to go ahead and mix it together? He has to go ahead, he has to get a koimitz from what? From both chalas. On that, the Gemara answer, we're kikin. The koimitz mechalas or kikin a chalas. You're separating a koimitz from chalas for the rekikin and vice versa. But l'chayri, you have to put two together. So the Gemara answers, Shamin l'Rebbe Shimon d'Amar im kamatz, if he does a kmitza for a mincha, which is half and half, for all b'yodai me'echad ashneim, and he comes up one, let's say he did kmitza and he needed both, but he only had one, it works. Freddy Marakasha, you're going ahead, you're doing a kmitza. Maybe it's only going to come up chalois. Maybe it's only come up rekikin and you need both. I'm going ahead. I'm doing what? Totally rekikin, great. Totally chalois, great. Now, I also am doing half and half. But what happens if that half is the other half? On that, the Gemara is answering, if it's the other half, you're still yaitza. Mamela, that would take care of it. That take care of the possibility. Let's see it in the words again. So one more time. How are you doing kmitza? Ichalas l'chudai, rekikin l'chudai, amri, the kamsin michales lahavi achales, the kamkinsin rekikin, lahavi rekikin. Now, imechza rekikin umechza chales, amri, the kamsina mechales lahavi mechza chales umechza rekikin, but the kamsina rekikin lahavi mechza rekikin umechza chales. Good? Half and half. Right? The Gemara, v'boy mikmat schad koimitz michales umekikin. Maybe I need to do both. I have to mix them together. Because kometz mechalas or kikim achalas, maybe it's going to be separate. Nice guy's geschmack, right? Maybe I'm only get half. He says, Shamin l'Rebbe Shimon, the Amar im kometz v'ola biyadai me'echad al shneim. If that's what happens, yatsa, you would be yatsa.
Is this